Hello everybody and welcome to Jim's 5 a.m. Club, and today we're going to go on a very brief walk and talk and chat to you about a book summary that I came about last night. And it's an interesting book. It's a book entitled Indistractable, and it's written by an author named Nir Eyal. And it's an interesting book, very, very thought-provoking. And there's one thing that really stood out for me, but let's go through all the other bits first. And when I get to this real key bit, I'll just let you know and see if it's as powerful for you as what it was for me. And in terms of distraction, you know, we we live in a world full of distraction. You know, there are things happening all the time to divert our distraction, or divert our attention, should I say, away from what we should be focusing on. And the question that the author kicks off the book with is, why do we do things that are against our best interests? And you see it happening all the time. You know, we've got New Year's coming in a day's time. And we're going to dutifully have our New Year's resolutions, talking about how we want to get fit, how we want to lose weight, how we want to live our lives, how we want to be a little bit more connected to our family and friends. And then all of a sudden, you know, a couple of weeks pass, a month passes, and we're back to where we were. And then this time next year, we'll be ruining why we didn't do the things we wanted to do. So it's all about trying to understand what causes the distractions in our lives and what makes us do what we do. And the author here talks about the fact that motivation is based on a desire to avoid discomfort. So it's an interesting take on things, that we are motivated in many ways to avoid discomfort. So to avoid pain. And I think I've mentioned a few times on this 5 a.m. Club that Anthony Robbins is big on this. He says that people will do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. So people will stay in a relationship, for example, for years, which is not serving them, because they fear what may happen if they leave that relationship and they're without a partner, without social circles or whatever. So that fear of breaking away is what keeps them sticking in a bad relationships where they continue to suffer. But they think that at least the suffering they have, in other words, the devil they know, is better than the devil that they don't know. And that's a saying that we all hear about all the time. But once again, that saying could be a good saying and it could be a limiting saying, so something to think about. But the author talks about the importance of trying to understand the root cause of distraction, rather than blaming other people around us and blaming the world for why things don't work out the way they do. Because if you weren't distracted, now the bottom line is, if you weren't distracted, and if you did what you said you were going to do, then you know you wouldn't need to blame anybody, because you'd be pretty happy, because you would have achieved or gotten further along the path, and you know, you'd be happy because you're enjoying the fruits of the goals that you've set for yourself and that you've achieved. But the author here says something which is interesting, that to ensure our survival, we are evolutionarily wired to feel easily dissatisfied, for without discontent, we wouldn't look for further benefits or advances. So that's pretty interesting. So in other words, what the author is suggesting is that we are wired in a way that makes us that ensures that we get distracted, so that we continue to thirst for other things, But we know very, very well that this dissatisfaction or this distraction may lead us on a good path and help us achieve bigger and better things. But for most people, it just leads them to doing nothing at all, just resting on their laurels and basically just trying to avoid all discomfort whatsoever. So it's great to be dissatisfied. Don't get me wrong. It's really, really important, and it's great to be dissatisfied. But you need to be dissatisfied with not doing anything. You need to be dissatisfied with not having meaningful goals or a strong purpose in life, rather than being dissatisfied with just doing things that are going to help you get further along the path. But the author also mentions that satisfaction, and we know this, that regardless of what you have in life, regardless of what you achieve, regardless of how much money you get, we all find the one thing, and it's the one recurring theme in our lives, that satisfaction is only temporary. Doesn't matter, how many beautiful women you surround yourself with. Doesn't matter how many fantastic cars you have. Doesn't matter how many wonderful houses you have throughout the world. There comes a point where it just gets boring. The satisfaction just doesn't continue to grow and build forever and a day. And the author suggests that satisfaction is temporary for one of four reasons. The first reason is that, as I alluded to before, you get bored. You get bored with the same thing over and over again. I guess to a certain extent, we all like to mix things up in our lives and to have a bit of variety, just to keep us interested, just to keep us happy to a certain extent. So boredom is one of those things that we need to learn how to deal with. The other thing is negativity. There's a negativity bias, and as we said before, that we are wired to be negative. We are wired to question what we do and why we do it, and to never ever feel satisfied. And there's a sense of emptiness that I guess everybody feels. And if anybody suggests that they don't feel it, then they may be just kidding themselves. But there's a sense of negativity, which is the bias, the human bias that we have. Then the author talks about the hedonic adaptation, which is basically, we've talked about this before, but what happens is that regardless of how many improvements you get in your life, say for example you win the lotto. You win the lotto, you get $1 or $2 million into your life, and initially it's really, really exciting, makes you really, really happy. It changes your life, changes your world. But before you know it, once again, as we said, you get used to it, and then you start comparing yourself to the other people around you who've got more money, and then you realise that there are things that you don't have, and your $2 million or $10 million can't buy. So once again, you get back and you get back to that level of satisfaction that you had before you won the money. So if you were a very happy person before you won the lotto, then you'll fall back to that sort of basic level. But one thing for sure and for certain is that we average out, and everybody has a line, a rate of happiness, and we sooner or later get dissatisfied and unhappy. Then the author talks about a term which I haven't heard before, but it's something that we're learning new, and it's called rumination. Rumination. Satisfaction is temporary because of rumination. So what rumination is that the more we resist an urge, how we have an urge, say for example, we'll keep it clean, say for example you've got an urge to sneeze, or you've got an urge to cough, or you've got an itchy nose, or you're itchy somewhere in your body. Rumination suggests that if you resist that urge, the more you resist it, the more it triggers rumination and makes the desire increase and become unbearable. So we've got desires in our lives, we've got wants, we've got needs, and if you don't satisfy those things, then something happens to us and we increase our need to fulfill those desires. And once again, that's something which I guess keeps us distracted from all the things that we should be doing. Just the fact that at the back of our mind we're saying, I've got to scratch that itch, I'm itchy, I've got to scratch it, I can't scratch it now. And the more you hold back, the more you want to do it until it becomes overwhelming. So the author here then talks about the importance of disarming intrusive thoughts. So learning how to disarm these things to become indistractable. And the best example I have of an indistractable person is, I don't know if anybody's been to Greece or been to Athens, been to the tomb of the unknown soldier, but the Greek presidential guard march and stand guard at that tomb 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, winter, summer, spring and autumn. And when you see those evzones standing guard, they are indistractable. They don't smile, they hardly blink. They just stand there for their allotted time. It could be half an hour, it could be an hour. I don't know exactly how much it is. I used to know, but I don't know. But you just look at them and they've just zoned out. And, just to stand anywhere. Now, there are times where I go to church and I just try and stand still. And I can't do it. I've got to fidget. I've got to, scratch my nose. I've got to move my hand. I've got to put my hand in my pocket just to see if there's something there. I'll move from one foot to the other just to change my balance. So to be indistractable is a very, very difficult thing. But what the author says here is that we need to learn how to disarm our intrusive thoughts to help us stay focused. So they talk about the importance of knowing or being aware that emotion usually precedes distraction. So the key is to be detached from your emotions, and not to engage emotion, because emotion feeds distraction. Now we've all experienced this when we were younger and we met our partners for the first time and we fell in love. Our life was just one big episode of distraction. Like, you just couldn't think of anything else other than your partner. What is she doing now? Where is she? What are we going to do tonight? Why hasn't she called? When am I going to call her? And it's just that chatter, that continuous chatter, which comes with love. So once again, the emotion, emotion precedes distraction is what the author's trying to tell us. So the author also tells us that we need to be able to write down our internal triggers and journal the things that trigger these emotions and trigger the distractions. Because what we'll find is that there are root causes. There are root causes that cause distraction. So, and they're triggered by something external or internal, something that makes us think about something and distracts us. Once again, I go to church and I'm standing in church and I'm trying to focus on the chanting, or I'm trying to focus on prayer, or I'm trying to focus on something, but always without a chance of it not happening, some other thoughts will just pop into my head, and all of a sudden your mind takes you on a tangent and just takes you somewhere else until you just stop yourself in your tracks and you say, hey, I'm at church, I just need to focus on church and not to be distracted. So we need to be able to then try and identify what word, what smell, what sensation, what was it that triggered the emotion that caused the distraction. The other thing we need to understand here is that we need to explore the negative sensation. What causes that thing to happen, to create that negativity and to distract us and to cause us not to be able to stick to our guns. And the author here says that we need to be cautious during liminal moments. So the liminal moments, what the author talks about is the moments that are transitions from one thing to another throughout the day. And it's usually when we're transitioning from one thing to another that we normally get distracted the most. And I guess it happens, like when you're transitioning, going from one thing to the other, all of a sudden you start thinking about the other thing, or you may be thinking 2 steps ahead about the other thing, and hence you get distracted, and those distractions just keep on eating away at you and taking you away from your focus. Because one thing for sure and for certain, if you want to be a top performer, if you want to be a high performer, if you want to be a leader in your field, you need to be able to focus and not to be distracted at all. All right, so that's very, very powerful and very, very important. So in terms of the external triggers and the distractions, the author says we need to ask ourselves 2 questions. Is this serving me, or am I serving it? So the habits that you have, the behaviors, the routines, all of the things that are going on in your life, you just need to ask yourself the simple question. Is it serving me? If it's serving you, then it's okay. Keep it going. Keep it going, baby. But if it's not serving you, then there's an invitation. There's an invitation to do something about it. Right. So, here comes the meaty part. This is the part that I love the most. And it's something that it's worked for me throughout my life. And it's something I think that it may be really, really powerful. And the author says something that's very, very simple. So don't expect it to be really, really, complex and complicated and powerful in scientific methods. But it says that the way you prevent distraction is by making a pact. Making a pact. So pre-deciding what you're going to do when a particular stimulus happens in your life. And we do this when we get married. When we get married, we form a pact with our partner, or we should be forming a pact with our partner, that regardless of what happens in our life, in sickness or in health, for richer or for poorer, regardless of what happens along the road, you hear what I'm saying? Regardless of what happens, we're going to stick together. We're not going to break apart regardless of what happens. If you get sick, I'm not going to abandon you. If I get poorer, you're not going to abandon me. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things there, but it's an example that a wedding service, an engagement, is a pact that you make. Everybody makes the pact, but very, very few people stick to it because they rationalize it and they come up with exceptions, and for some reason the pact is not a pact. I think I've mentioned before years ago that Paul and I, over the years, like all couples, we have our good days, we have our bad days. And on occasion we'd have a bit of a fight and a bit of a tiff and an argument. And the kids, my children, when we were growing up, they always used to get alarmed and scared at some of the behaviours that they saw, in me, or mainly me, and they were worried. But I took my children up. I sat down with my children one day, and I told them, regardless of what I say and do, regardless of what you think may happen, I promise you that I will never ever leave your mother. I will never ever leave your side, and I'll be your father and your mother's husband for the rest of my life. So don't worry. So I made that pact with my children. So where are we heading with this? I guess the important thing to understand is that in order to get through the tough times, you need to pre-decide. You need to say to yourself, when times get tough, when I hit the rough waters, as a captain of this boat, or as a responsible and accountable partner in this relationship, what am I going to do to make sure that we get through it? Because we know that after the rough water is calm water. Paula and I have a beautiful relationship, but there are times where it was tough, just like all couples. But you need to get through those rough times, those times where every couple experiences troubles and challenges. But the way you do it is by making a pact and sticking to it. So the author talks about these pre-commitments which remove future choice. So by making a pact, you're removing future choice, you're removing other people getting involved and stirring the pot. You remove the chances of rationalising and coming up with excuses and exceptions to the rule, because you say, this is our pact, we're going to stick to it no matter what. And if you're a man of your word, and if your partner is a woman of her word, then you've got a chance of getting through. So to all young couples, to all young people, I guess the important message today is to learn how to make pacts. But by the same token, there needs to be a balance between a pact that's going to not serve you and absolutely destroy you, and one that's going to serve you and help you over your entire life. That's the hardest thing, and each person has to decide themselves whether or not a relationship or a pact continues to serve them and to serve them well. But the only encouragement that I can give is that everything that's worthwhile in life has its difficult times. So by sticking at it, by sticking with it, you can complete your masterpiece. But each person has their own life to deal with and their own choices and decisions to make. But pacts are very, very important because they remove, that pre-commitment removes any future choice, So that's just something to think about. As I say, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you some options to consider and to think about based on the book Indistractable by Nir Eyal. So to finish off, the author talks about 3 types of pact. The first type of pact is called an effort pact. So you just continue to do whatever you have to do to remove and not allow unwanted behaviours to distract you and to cause problems. So it's about nipping undesirable behaviours in the bud and being accountable and responsible and doing the right thing. The other sort of pact is a price pact, where you pay a fine, and examples of this is that, I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but you know how sometimes we have swear fines, where if you're swearing in front of your family, you put $20 into a piggy bank or something like that. So you pay a fine. So there's a financial penalty that ensures that you break that habit, or that it reminds you and it keeps you accountable and responsible. And the third one is called an identity pact, where basically what you do is you set up your identity, your self-identity, your self-image in terms of who you see yourself to be. And you may model yourself on your father, your uncle, your grandfather, or you may model yourself on some other male within your family or within your social circle. And you say, well, that's who I am, that's who I want to be, that's who I want to be held up to, that's a standard I want to be held up to. And you use that as your pact, and you see yourself in a future light as a grandfather, as a great-grandfather, as a father, and say that, I want to be the example, the shining example for my daughters. I want to be the example for my cousins and other people in my family to look up to. I want to be the ancestor that people look back over and model their life on. So there are ways that you can create pacts which are very, very powerful, and can shape your destiny and shape your future, and cause you to stick to the path that you promised yourself to stick to, and make you indistractable, because it just keeps you on track. You know the track, you know the target, you know what you want to do, and you just have mechanisms along the way to keep you honest and to keep you accountable and responsible. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. So thank you very much for joining me on Jim's 5am Club. We're rapidly coming to the end of 2020, and I'll try and get a few more 5am clubs completed tomorrow. So I hit my 600 mark, with 61 in English and 539 so 61 in Greek and 539 in English. So thank you very much for joining me. Let's finish off with a positive affirmation. I'm alive, I am well, and I feel absolutely great. To my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, and thank you once again for joining me on this 5am Club. It's a tricky topic, but as you know, and as you've become accustomed to, I enjoy the tricky topics. I enjoy putting my hand down the hole and pulling out the snake, as the Greeks say, "Na βγάζω το φίδι από τη τρύπα," and to give you something to think about, give us all something to think about, remind us of what we stand for, give us purpose, and help us get through the day, and to get through the week, and hopefully finish off the year and get us ready for a new year. So thank you very much to all my friends and family. Stay connected. It's very important to stay connected. Stay relevant. Stay reasonable. And most importantly, stay indistractable. And the best advice that we get from this book is to set a pact. Do a pact, create a pact with your partner, with your work friends, or with anybody, and just say, this is what we stand for, this is who we are, and this is how we're going to deliver our results. And there's nothing going to distract us, nothing going to get in our way, and nothing going to cause us to change direction, unless, of course, what we're doing doesn't serve us. That's the proviso. So yassas, take care, have a good rest of the day, and thank you for joining me on this tricky but interesting Jim's 5am club. Yassas and bye for now. Get the lemmiksana. Bye.